Hello, welcome to 21 This Week. I'm Susan Heltemes. Coming up next, Maryland legislature in overdrive, Democratic presidential campaign on steroids, and Governor Hogan's ethics checked. We are joined today by voices from all sides. Former school board member Jill Ortman-Fouse, Maryland Young Republican National Committeeman Evan Young, Bill Askinazi, former Maryland Secretary of Business and a Montgomery County attorney, and former County Council member Nancy Floreen. All of this and more. Stay tuned. On Thursday, both houses in Annapolis voted for a ban on the intentional release of balloons in the air. Although worthy of discussion, we are going to focus on other legislation. Jill, as a former school board member, what's your take on the Kerwin proposal to infuse $4 billion into the state public school system, referred to as the blueprint for Maryland's future?
Well, I think it's really, really important that we address this right now. As you may be familiar with the Thornton formula, which is what we've been using for over 15 years, that was groundbreaking when we first adopted it to be able to give the funding most needed to the schools that needed it the most. Over the course of time, the need has way outstripped the funding. And this is critical for especially our schools that have the most needs. It won't be all at once, and it's over a 10-year period before we get to that $4 billion number, and I think that's something that people need to keep in mind.
So, Evan, as the youngest person on the panel now, what a privilege.
What's
your take on this financial overhaul of the educational system that voters routinely say is the most important issue?
Yeah, obviously everyone wants adequate funding for schools and for students. I think it's important to also take a long, hard look at how is that money being spent, and is it being spent efficiently? We see in Baltimore City, they are among the highest per student spending in the country. I don't think anyone would say Baltimore City schools have the top ranked in the nation education outcomes. We just saw the CEO of the Baltimore schools got approved a pay raise over $300,000 a year. Meanwhile, at the start of the school year, 60 buildings didn't have working AC, and they've had to send kids home before because the icicles won't melt inside the schools. So we lead the nation in administrative costs, but I've had to help my teacher friends buy materials for their classrooms before. So when we're looking to Susan, I'm a humanitarian, you know that. Susan, so while we're looking to spend more money, everyone wants to spend money on education, but we need to make sure it's going to the right place.
So, Bill, as a former business appointee in Maryland government here, how do you view the overhaul and the fiscal impacts it's going to have based on the funding streams proposed?
Well, education is the great equalizer. It certainly is. You lift people up through education and opportunity. That's not the issue. The issue is yet another unfunded mandate, and we've lived through these in Maryland. When you throw billions of dollars at a problem, you have to first understand that each locality has different issues. Baltimore City's issues in education are not the same as Cecil County, which is not the same as Montgomery County. These huge deposits of money need to be thought through and worked through. We're all in favor, I think, of having more salaries or certain salaries for teachers and pre-kindergarten, but is this putting a salary at $60,000 for a teacher who lives in Frederick County and mandating that it be the same as somebody who lives, you know, maybe on the Eastern Shore? That seems to me it's being an over-inclusive approach. Let's take this very important funding issue, but carve it out. Instead of throwing out all this type of money, because it'll be wasteful and inefficient. And that's usually the problem with unfunded mandates.
Well, Nancy, we know you spent years on the county council, where the school, as we all know, takes up more than half of the budget. What's the impact of this legislation going to be on our county?
Well, what I don't know is how they're, whether they're changing the formula for how dollars are distributed. That's always been a big issue. Montgomery County is likely to be, under the current proposal, the sales tax idea, Montgomery County is going to be the biggest payer. And the question is it going to, how are we going to benefit? You know, we as a county, and I don't have the numbers at my fingertips, but we tend locally to put more money into the local school system than other jurisdictions. And the question is, we've always exceeded maintenance of effort, except for a couple of years when everyone was hit by the recession. A lot of jurisdictions do not, even now, even make their basic payments, find their own resources to pay. So looking at a statewide set of resources where, you know, if you're looking at services and wealth, well, where is that money all going to come from if we're looking at a 6% sales tax?
Well,
it's
but
come from Montgomery County. Plus, and then they're proposing to reduce, which I think is silly from a political perspective, reduce the basic sales tax.
But then they're going to be taxing additional industries, which sounds good on the surface.
We'll get much more money, though, to us as a county. Right now, we're getting 28% from the state. We'll be getting a 1-to-1 match from the state. And when
That's a first.
When you talk about wasting money, what's wasting money across the state is having teachers in your classroom for 3 to 5 years and then losing them and having to train new teachers, having to go to North Carolina, having to go to Pennsylvania to recruit teachers.
The question is, how is Montgomery County going to fare? And that's what I hope our legislators will take a really close look at. It's easy to talk about these, I don't know, no one disagrees with this fundamental premise. We all want teachers to get paid more. We want better special education. We want more pre-K. But where's that money really going to go? Is it going to come to Montgomery County? That is what our legislators need to verify. And the funding, excuse me, and the funding formulas. That is where the money really hits the road here, and I don't know what that looks like, and it tends to be ironed out in the dark of night. The minute
and you know what?
bell,
We're running out of time,
closes.
so I want to ask each of you quickly 2 questions. We'll just go right down the row, starting with you, Jill. Is it going to pass, and is it going to be enacted after the legislature doesn't override next year of the governor's veto?
I think it's absolutely going to pass. I do think we have to pay attention to the funding sources.
But is it going to be an override next year?
I think so, but
Bill, what do you think?
I think it'll pass, but why are you assuming the governor's going to veto it?
He said
in the current format, where there's no monies, he would take a, you know.
Okay, what do you think, Nancy?
Well,
pass?
Again, there are a lot of unanswered questions.
But we're out of time,
There are
so
other
the answer-
proposals, so I'd say wait and see.
Do you think the governor will sign it?
I think it's unlikely.
Okay. Evan, is it going to pass?
A watered-down version that he does not sign that gets vetoed and overridden.
Overridden. Okay. So now, you know, it's going to be interesting what's going to happen because everybody's talking about it, and it's the thing. Okay, so Bill, legislation to ban plastic bags in Maryland at the point of sale is supposed to take place in July 2021. That would cost customers 10 cents for a durable carryout bag. The sponsor asserts that consumers go to the store with their wallet and they'll learn to take reusable bags. Is this good for the environment? Is it good for Maryland?
Oh my God, the bag police, give me a break. We've got enough regulations that are killing small business. Now you're going to penalize a small business.
They get to keep the money, though.
The legislation says that there's a fine of $500.
But they get to keep the money.
If there's a fine for a business owner if you run afoul of the bag, forgetting to give the bag. First, we went from saving trees, remember that? And paper bags were terrible. Then we went to plastic. That's terrible. Now we're going back to paper.
But I want you to know that in Montgomery County, there are less bags on the street and in the air.
Susan,
and it's absolutely
Actually,
true.
I'm not sure that's true, Susan. No. Our numbers showed it was a moneymaker. We weren't stopping people from getting that many bags.
Well,
and it's a nice revenue stream, and it sounds good, and it does help people change their behavior, and there's nothing wrong with that. But you're not going to keep plastic bags out of the
water
circulation.
Stream. Okay, Joe. Lunch shaming is a trending topic these days as kids whose school lunch accounts are depleted and they get their lunches often ripped away and get a cheese sandwich if they're lucky. Does this proposed legislation appropriately resolve the issue for Maryland?
I think we have to see, because it charges boards of education with stopping lunch, gives them a variety of different ways that they can stop lunch shaming in their areas, from how they offer lunches to how they do debt collection. So I kind of have have to see
And
how it's going to
telling them about free and reduced
and tell them
meals
about
and
the
things.
and engaging the families. But we already did a lot of those things here in Montgomery County, and we had thousands of kids who experienced lunch shaming from receiving cheese sandwiches. This is something I took personally when I was on the board, which is why I reached out to our Montgomery County Board of Education's Education Foundation, and they started a fund to reimburse schools so that we didn't have to give the cheese sandwiches and the kids could eat whatever they wanted.
As I
saw
told
this happen
everybody
in our
earlier,
schools.
I was a mentor for a little boy once, and this happened to him, and it was, in essence, almost a sense of bullying. And that's the way it's viewed, because you don't have money for a lunch.
Right.
You are looked down upon, and it's terrible.
And what the inequity in Montgomery County was that if you had a school where you had families that could contribute to the PTA or contribute to a lunch fund, they would cover those lunches, so no one experienced the shame.
But in poor schools.
But in poor schools, you didn't have that.
Okay, now, Evan, you are constantly encouraging us to get in better shape. And in Montgomery County, elementary kids now get 45 minutes a week in PE. And for decades, there have been bills to increase this in Annapolis. And this year's version, makes it as a goal, but not mandated, for 90 minutes a week. Now, put into consideration, 15% of Maryland students are overweight and 11% are obese. Are you going to get your young Republicans out there now and rally for this legislation?
I think we should be rallying to make it mandated, not just a goal. Kids don't exercise anymore. They don't play outside. They play video games. This makes me sound much older than I am, by the way. But
let them play football and get knocked in the head, as you have
yes,
said.
builds character. But look, whenever
Maybe
this
you
topic
play too much. Maybe
whenever
that's
this topic comes up, and people tell me I focus on like the superficial appearance part of it because mine's so good, but that's not what it comes down to, Susan. Ask 100% of people who have ever been unhealthy or in bad shape that then get healthier. They're better in every aspect of their life. So if you want good students that can focus and have energy and do well for the amount of time they have to sit in school, these kids have to be exercising, have to be given some sort of targeted exercise that's not just, here's a ball, go run around, but like actually teaching them how to be healthy in physical education. So as long as the education part is focused on, then absolutely.
And that seems so obvious as a truism, but why did we go away from that? I think the political correctness of some people are more athletic than others, competition on the playing field.
No, they
that's
had
not
other
it at all.
mandates
Well,
in there.
There are too many mandates around academic accountability, and that's what
Too
sucked
much
the life out of
testing,
our
all of that.
resources.
Nancy,
I'm not so sure.
Although there's no legislation involved in this, Maryland legislators are beginning to ask for an ethics investigation into Governor Hogan's businesses and state contracts. Is this a legitimate concern?
Well, look, if there's a really legitimate issue, sure. I can't imagine anyone is simply shocked that the governor is a real estate developer and has been involved in real estate for many, many years. And some of those properties may lie in places where we're building other kinds of infrastructure. Is there a quid pro quo? I'd be really kind of shocked to hear that. Most of our roads and intersection improvements and so forth have been planned and in capital programs for years and years and years. And so is there some kind of intersection here? I don't know. I haven't seen anything that suggests it. I can understand, politically it's appealing.
And it was all based on a Washington.
He's made more money in office than any other previous governor. We don't know if that's causal, like you're saying. It could be correlation.
Oh, come on. This is a political smear, clear and simple. There's absolutely no smoke, no fire. What we have here is we have a campaign season, and so a governor who has the highest rating and a lot of politically motivated opponents will throw it at him.
But you know what?
Let me
Then
just
the
finish this.
governor should be willing to go along with
He's
it.
transparent and he's conforming to every ethical opinion out there. This is a Brandywine interchange that the local governments had supported for decades prior to Governor Hogan even being involved in this.
But there are supposedly some other contracts, though, I think, that are engaged there also, not just one place. That's what I'm hearing through the grapevine.
If there really is a fire to be examined, I don't think anyone would have any issue with it. But at this point, and this is not news. This is nothing new that the governor has historically been involved in all this stuff for many, many years before he became governor. And those are legitimate points to raise during campaigns. And at this point, you know,
It's
we'll see.
early. He should take care of it now before the next
I
election.
also heard rumblings of this back before the 2018 election, and he got overwhelmingly reelected. So I don't think anyone really
There's
cares.
no-
But
that
people
much.
also point to his desire to expand 495 and 270 and not fund
Lord,
public
help me.
transit.
We have had that one on the books for 20 years, more than that. You know, my goodness, if to suggest
So are you
that
all-
but
infrastructure improvements are tied to one person's
But
objective.
the public
Yeah,
transit
that's
was not
nuts.
was being ignored to the funding.
Oh, come
of
on, that's a political
expansion.
thing, and frankly,
Sure
a
it is.
rational choice thing about how many people benefit when you think about it.
Well,
we
the
can have a
best
whole
thing
nother
that he
meeting on
could
that one.
do is to say, I'm totally transparent. Let's
He
get
has,
this over
he
with.
has shown
I mean-
that. You know, again, he has said, these are my interests. He put his papers before the ethics committee, and now this leak or this
but-
article comes out, and somebody grabs it and makes it a headline.
Well,
Nothing there.
okay,
We'll
well,
see.
we will see. And we're going to be right back after this short break. Stay tuned. The Democratic presidential primary is underway, and the debate on Wednesday night was a display of the intensity of the campaign. Jill, what's your take on the race with the entrance of Mike Bloomberg, who appears to be willing to spend his endless resources, his personal resources, and his selection this week of former Baltimore Mayor Stephanie Rawlings Blake as one of his national political co-chairs?
Well, clearly, we need campaign finance reform. I mean, Citizens United is biting us all over the place. I don't think she's the big story, even though they seem to have had a good relationship. She's got a national
He has
reputation.
4 big mayors, former mayors, Nutter and Villagrosa.
She's been president of the National Conference of Mayors. That's a great. But I think the bigger news is the way he got read for filth, as my daughter would say, at the last debate by Elizabeth Warren. I think people had put Mike Bloomberg up as this all-star. We're going to fight fire with fire. He's the one we need to match Trump. And then we saw that debate happen, and
The NDA's got him down.
taken
But do
down.
you know what? I have several friends of a certain age, the mature women, who said, I've had it with this Me Too movement. I think he'd be a great president, and she went too far. So.
I think the Democratic Party has a lot to worry about. Republicans went through this soul-searching years ago. Now the Democrats are doing it. It's divisive in the party. Quote Mayor Pete from the debate. You got one candidate who's trying to burn down the country. You got another candidate who's trying to buy the country. Who's the real Democrat in the race?
Well, neither one of those
Well,
is so
it's really interesting. I think Bloomberg was right when he said, in describing the mess that debate reflected, that's exactly what Trump wants.
And Trump-
Democrats picking on each other.
Yes.
And
Instead
Nancy-
of
I disagree.
proposing-
I think it's-
excuse me, interrupting, being impolite, being not civil, and not focusing on issues.
Yeah.
It's very hard to stick to your time and not be and try to get your message out.
Okay,
I
and
think
we are
some
running
did.
out of time. I just want to know what you think about the fact in Maryland this last week, Comptroller Francho and former Delegate Bob Flanagan endorsed Klobuchar. What do you think is going to happen here when we vote on April 20?
My personal opinion is I think the Democrats have to come to understand we need a candidate who can reach out across some party lines here, and there aren't many of them who can do that. It's very difficult for the left wing of the party to accept that.
Yeah.
Will they? They didn't in 2016.
And we'll see
and
what
we'll
happens.
see what happens this time.
Okay, so Bill and Evan, Republicans we've coronated Trump. You know, they've canceled primaries. Is your primary over?
Okay, first of all, it's normal for an incumbent president, whether they're a Republican or Democrat, to not challenge that person.
But you
Especially-
don't cancel primaries. Democrats don't do that. And look at where it's gotten us in the past. That's all I've got to say.
personally-
1980.
Enough said.
So
Susan.
personally, I'd be fine. I'd like to see a primary in each state, give voters the chance to have their say. He's got over 90% approval. I haven't seen it drop.
96, wasn't it?
Haven't
So-
seen it drop under 80 since like 2017. So he's in no danger.
In light of what's been happening in the last few days, are some Republicans having second thoughts? I mean, Bob Flanagan said this isn't his party anymore, and he can't support Trump.
Well, the Connie Morella Republicans that I Connie was my mentor basically, and,
Yeah.
and are those Republicans gone? Are they? No, they're there.
They're going to support the Democrat
They're
though
there.
this time.
No, they may not.
I
Your
don't know
nominee
if
is
it.
Bernie Sanders are not voting for it.
I wouldn't assume anything. I have relatives.
Well, it depends on who the nominee
I
is.
have relatives who wrote in during the last election. They wrote in their favorite candidate because they could not support Mr. Trump, but they couldn't vote for Democrat. And I think that it continues to be the challenge.
So what you're saying is that an
I
Amy
would not assume
Klobuchar might
anything.
be able to bridge the gap, and that
Well, we're going to need a candidate who can do that. I think she's one of them. We'll see.
Yeah, she's the least alienating, I think, of the majors.
Yeah, I like I say, I don't think that the conflict that we saw the other night was a bad thing. I think that we were sorting out the issues and seeing who could bring the fight to Trump. That's what
well, we're going to stop there, but I know we're going to talk about this more. Wow, April 28th is a long time away. Okay, we're going to be right back for parting shots. Now with parting shots. Jill, you're first.
The big issue in our school system right now is boundaries. And if you haven't been paying attention, you need to learn everything you can, because there's a lot of rumors out there that are making people very upset that are not based on what's actually happening in our school system, which is figuring out how to best use our school dollars and our facilities. And for anybody who's got questions about that, I encourage you to go to the MCPS website and find out more.
Okay, Evan, you're up.
So, as Susan likes to remind everyone, I've had many concussions and many surgeries and never even got the chance to cash in and make millions off of it in the NFL. But this is a message to now former Redskins tight end Jordan Reed. He just got released after his 7th concussion that kept him out the entire year. Took him 6 months to get cleared through the concussion protocol. Bro, you've made $40 million. You're 29 years old. You've had at least 7 diagnosed concussions. You're good. He said he wanted to go out and have a fresh start and try to play again. Enjoy your $40 million when you're 60 years old and still remember that you're rich at that point. You've done your job. Congratulations. Thanks for the years as a Redskin, but please retire.
Okay, Bill.
Cautionary tale on a personal note. I was diagnosed with cancer last September. Be your own advocate out there. Don't trust first opinions. I saved my own life. Why? Because I questioned a high calcium level. I had thyroid cancer. And I questioned the high calcium level when the doctors told me everything was fine. I researched it, and another doctor then came in and saved my life. Don't accept, one opinion, challenge orthodoxy, because it could save your life.
And we are happy that you're back and you look great.
Thank you
Okay,
so much. Good to be back.
Nancy.
What I would say to people is please pay attention. Follow along. We've got some races coming up. School board races. Very few people follow those races. Very few people know who they're electing when they go to the ballot box. Sometimes people don't even vote for school board members because they just don't know anything. They're the ones who are making really important decisions about our children and about half our budget. So please, and engage. Follow what's going on with the county executive. Follow what's going on with the county council. You can go to their websites, you can get information. We don't have much local coverage anymore, and it shows council members don't hear from as many people as they should. I know, being out of it, I don't get any news handed to me anymore. And frankly, I know more than most people. But if you don't follow it, you cannot blame folks for the decisions that you made, that they make. So please weigh in. It's not hard. You can send them emails, but please stay engaged. That's really important to our local democracy as well as the national system.
And on that point, stay tuned to MCM, because right here they do a lot of good campaign coverage, and without you got to watch this station. And on that note, thank you to our panel, the crew, and you for joining us each week for Montgomery County's hardest hitting political talk show, 21 this week. Be sure to follow on social media. See you next time, and I'm Susan Heltemes. Bye for now.